my cousin, Buckley Hammond, who grew up the first 5, 6, 7 years, I don't know, of his life in Guatemala, is just going to give you a little perspective of what it was like then. Now it's rated even worse. And that's where the majority of this new wave of 17% of them are children. But if it's a 50-year-old serial killer, you're not allowed to stop them. Even if they've been deported 6 times, you got to let them come back and murder a Border Patrol agent and his father who are fishing right in front of their mother just to take their wallet. That's the funny thing. These folks coming out of Mexico and Latin America, they mainly prey on other Hispanics. But if you don't want Hispanic Americans being murdered en masse or being fed on by drug gangs, you're racist. So we're going to talk to Buckley Hammond, my cousin, who helped start InfoWars 19 years ago, who now has come back to the team last year. He's here with us. That's coming up in a few minutes. But here's the headline: Border Patrol agent. These people are coming here to do horrible things. Here's the clip.
These people are coming to do horrible things, and I think the murder of Agent Vega shows what these people are capable of. And so we have this situation where we catch them, and then when they're turned over to ICE, they are being ordered to be released. And how is that an effective border strategy, and how any politician, the president included, can justify that is beyond me.
Continuing here, ladies and gentlemen, with the Infowars.com news. Mainstream media, though, is saying Americans against wide open borders are anti-immigration. But no other civilized country has opened its borders as widely as America has. Kit Daniels breaks it down. What KVEO-TV is reporting that anyone, including ranchers that are being robbed on a weekly basis, who doesn't want to have open borders is basically a racist. So this is the mindlessness of it. And then you've got the dumbed-down propaganda of people like the vice president a few days ago saying, these are all our children. Meanwhile, they made a deal a year ago in Guatemala to bring these people in and to allow Guatemala to allow people from Central and South America to come through. And Mexico has a deal now, on record, an international racketeering, smuggling, drug trafficking, money laundering deal with the Obama administration to let their people through and turn the Border Patrol into a conveyor belt to deliver the illegals and to bust them anywhere they want to go in the country. 17% is the latest numbers in the new Border Patrol report that leaked last week, pointing out that thousands are from Ebola-stricken countries, thousands more from Al-Qaeda and IS-linked countries. And again, I'm not wringing my hands in fear of the Ebola. It just shows the recklessness. I'm not wringing my hands in fear of the Al-Qaeda people. Even if they were to blow up a bunch of stuff, okay, kills a few thousand people, I'm sad that happens. Statistically, cars, cancer, heart attacks, electrocution, drowned, it's all much more dangerous. It's like I'm not scared of great white sharks. Be a terrible way to get killed, but, I mean, 5 people a year on average get killed by it. The point is, it shows the whole war on terror is a facade and an excuse to bring in a police state that takes all of our rights. So let's go to that clip, because I mentioned Biden again yesterday saying this and saw a comment on YouTube saying I was a liar. He hadn't said this, so here's the clip.
These are not somebody else's kids. These are our kids. These are the children that lift the national ambitions of each of these countries aloft. And it's a tragedy for the countries who are losing them, and for us not being able to solve every one of their problems.
Oh, you can't abort all of them. And now all the conservatives and Christians and Christian conservative libertarians and constitutionalists that are against aborting 9-month-old babies that could just be delivered and instantly adopted up. And the mother could be paid $50,000 to $200,000 by the adoption agency for the healthy baby. Blonde-haired, blue-eyed babies, $400,000. Black-haired, green-eyed babies, $500,000, $600,000. Hispanic babies, $150,000. Black babies, $50,000. I'm sad. That's just the market. I think all the babies are worth the same. It's come out the CPS has quotas on kids that the adoption agencies want, and they end up getting money for it. It's a huge criminal racket most of the CPS are actually private guilds and groups. There are some people that work in the foster system that aren't even bad, but at the top, it's big spiders running the operation. And no one's going to cry out for those kids, or the kids having radiation tested on them or pesticides tested on them. That even comes out in New York Daily News. Nobody gets in trouble. Killing little black kids with pesticides. No one tells the women that if they call the phone number on those billboards that Catholic Charities and others put up that say, you know, pregnant, scared, that you'll end up getting everything paid for to have your baby and money at the end of it. You just go in, you get an abortion that doubles your chances of different types of uterine cancer, all sorts of other issues. No one tells you that. And, oh, it's because Joe Biden loves the children. Don't we have a video of the birth of Joe Biden? Can you guys cue that up? John Bound knows where it's at. It's the birth of Obama, I think, caught on tape is the name of it. And it's satire, but we cue that up, we can play it. The point is they could care less about these kids, and they have no moral high ground, when plus 17% of the illegals pouring in are the kids. My cousin grew up in Guatemala. I'll have him tell you the story and just hit some of the high points or low points. Beautiful country, got to see volcanoes erupting, interesting people. Just south of Mexico. Used to be part of Mexico, but Santa Ana made them mad, so they broke away like Texas did. He was such a thug, increasing taxes, trying to take their guns. He grew up there because my aunt and uncle were down there working on, well, I guess they bought property and had a coffee plantation. But the issue was a lot of his Vietnam buddies were moving down there, so he moved down there. And he can tell you the rest of the story of what Guatemala's like. And by the way, he was there in the 70s and early 80s when it was bad. It is now, by every metric, much worse. An absolute hellhole. Beautiful place, but a green hell. And Buckley Hammond, one of the original Info Warriors, now back on the team after a decade in Chicago, up there working for Big TV. Buckley, tell folks, just, I have no idea even what you're going to break down. I know some of the stories. Your brother kidnapped, all of it. Go through those stories for people so they understand what's coming up here. And that Joe Biden says there are children. It's our responsibility. Can't take care of your kids, you're going bankrupt? Have trouble getting off work to pick your kids up at school? Doesn't matter. These are your kids. The whole world's your responsibility, or you're racist. So, Buckley Hammond.
Exactly. First of all, let me just say that the whole magnitude of this experience isn't lost on me. I'm really, really happy to be here talking to you and talking to your more than 3 million daily listeners that, to me, represent the core of a new renaissance, of a new field of thought in the world, that we're spreading liberty. And I'm real excited to be here, so let me just get that out of the way. Regarding Guatemala, you know, it's a really long and interesting subject. You could pore over books and read Wikipedia articles, et cetera, about it all day long. And it's just been a century of conflict down there. And when you're talking about the violence that is occurring down there now, unfortunately, that's not a new phenomenon. And there's a duality to this that I think is really important to understand, is that, yes, it has always been very violent down there, but the nature of the violence has changed. If you go all the way back into the history of Guatemala, obviously it was colonized by the Spaniards, and the Spaniards were there for a long time. They brought a lot of really positive, interesting things to the culture. Their architecture is still there, and it's really gorgeous and beautiful. But you know, they did all the Indians were basically their indentured servants, and you had everything that is you know, endemic to most of the colonial experiences around the world. In the 1950s, and this is a story that every conspiracy theorist should know because it's not a theory, it's an actual fact.
CIA coup.
Exactly. In the 1950s, United Fruit, with the help of the CIA, deposed a president named Jacobo Arbenz. And they basically just went in there just exactly like the globalists are doing now, but it was a lot more brazen because they just came in with their guns and they just took control of the whole situation, so that people like Bob Dole of you know, Chiquita Banana, which is now which was United Fruit, could get their way. You know, they just marched in there with guns and just made whatever they needed to happen. And so I would highly suggest that people go and read about that, because that's a really, really interesting and really just open, naked view into the nascent globalists' sort of power structure.
And it's easy to say, oh, that's third world people, let them do it. Now they're doing it to us.
Absolutely. They're turning it around. And the sad thing is that after that happened, in the 1950s and from 1960s, there has been a civil war in Guatemala from the 1960s all the way through to 1996. Now, that is 36 years. 36 years that the country has been racked, with a violent civil war. And the majority of that is basically just this revolving door of people in power and leftist and socialist and actually communist, like Russian supported insurgents, that were attacking a government that was backed by the CIA in the United States, and it just went back and forth and back and forth. So the country is just riddled with bloodletting that's been going on for generations. Now, what is significant about that is the fact that now the Civil War is supposedly over, right? But what has happened is you've had generations and generations of people who have known nothing but violence and have been racked back and forth by violence. And basically all the power structures that are there, like the police and any sort of way to keep civil calm, has been almost completely deconstructed. So at this stage right now, Guatemala is, instead of having two forces that are sort of fighting each other, it's become an absolute cesspool of absolute horrific violence against the people themselves.
It's anarchy. What all these anarchists want is Guatemala. This is what government devolves into, an absolute nightmare instead of a very small constitutional government.
Exactly. And there is an article that I read a long time ago, and I went back and I looked it up again, and it was just very startling and very visceral, and it really sort of details the horror that these people live through on a daily basis. And it was in the New Republic, and it's called The Most Dangerous Job in the World. And basically, it's a story about how 900 Guatemalan bus drivers were killed by thugs and gangsters and murderers over the course of a year. So I would highly suggest people go and read that. I think it's
900. And again, that's what's coming here, because it's not just Guatemala. All of Central and South America is descending into road warrior, frothing insanity. And our government is saying, come on, come up here.
Hi, I'm Shane Steiner. A lot of you have been following my progress using Super Male Vitality. The last 19 weeks has been an incredible experience. I was feeling a little down and lethargic during the holidays, and none of the supplements that I was taking were doing any good. That's when my longtime friend from high school, Alex Jones, introduced me to Super Male Vitality. I was a little skeptical at first. Not only would I have the energy to work out and go to the gym, but it was actually the changes were happening to my body a lot more rapidly. My whole mood, my libido, everything had completely changed. The concentrated organic herbs, they stimulate your natural systems to produce the natural hormones that you need. I just really wanted to bulk up and hit it hard, and I went in for about the first 5 weeks and was lifting heavy weight and just really hitting it hard, and I gained 20 pounds of muscle immediately. Since that, I've decided I was going to lose some weight and slim down. I just changed up my workout a little bit, and 35 pounds came off. Folks, this is not a joke. This is not a gimmick, it's real. Super Male Vitality, available at InfoWarsLife.com.
Globalists have deliberately destabilized Central and South America. They're now moving to destabilize North America. They started with Mexico. And this is part of their larger plan. So anyone who's for all these illegals pouring in wants to destroy the country. Period. You can say, oh, it's for children all day. Bull. Buckley, get back into the 900 bus drivers killed in 1 year to the point of buses just stop moving. This is the insanity of an unstable country where people only know how to rob and steal when the country goes completely bad. And now the crime rate is exploding across the Southwest as the crime wave out of Central and South America conduits up through Mexico in a deliberate plan. Buckley, break down the stories.
Well, you're right. When violence gets to that level, it just creates it's like your body like locking down in toxic shock. It just, nothing can work. I mean, how can bus drivers and people who drive trucks with products in the back make it from point A to point B, you know, without being robbed at gunpoint. And so it's a really, really vicious circumstance. And one of the things that I'd like to do is just sort of relate a couple of stories that happened to me personally when I was growing up in Guatemala. I was born in 1974 in Guatemala City in the Aurora hospital down there. And I lived there for till I was about 11 years old. We came back in 1986. And the first story that I'm going to tell is about some friends of my parents, and this was before I was even 1 year old. The woman's name was Elsa Schumann, and the little boy, his name was Jonas, and he was my friend. You know how like little pre-toddler babies will have.
And to be clear, your dad was down there as a missionary and ran a Christian school too.
Exactly. And so one day they went downtown. The wife and the young boy went downtown to go to the market, and a bomb exploded nearby them, and they were both severely injured. The little boy Jonas died, and the mother gave my mom a teddy bear that I have kept with me my whole life. It's been in my bed for my whole life, and that's to me is sort of a reminder of where I came from. And it's a really stark reminder that you know, children and everybody else is a danger and as collateral damage in this war. You know,
now, was that a loving communist bomb that killed him?
Absolutely, it was a loving communist bomb. So another story was that my mom and I were downtown at one point, going to the market. Actually, it was the bank, if I remember correctly. We were in the bank, and a car bomb blew up outside. You know, all the plaster was coming off the walls, et cetera. I remember that very clearly. So I very nearly was in one of those circumstances too. Another story that I have is that we used to drive all together in a sort of a armored car to go to school. And one time we were coming off of an exit on a highway, much like a circular. You know, like when you come off the exit and you have to turn around a circular way to go down. And there was a big shootout in front of us. It was an assassination, and a bunch of people just shot the car in front of us. And our driver drove off the road, went off-roading, and drove off, and we just saw the aftermath of that. And I remember my mom reminded me this morning that when we were driving around, she used to play a game where she would say, "Duck!" And we would all have to duck, you know, and it was really just preparing us for the next time that there was, you know, a fusillade of bullets and guns.
And, of course, guns were banned there, but it was a total hellhole.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like Mexico. And once a civil war, a mafia war breaks out, once we accept a gangster culture, you don't hardly ever come back. You can knock Christians all day, and America hadn't been perfect, but we've been a lot more stable than other nations. That's what made the wealth. And now we're converting to a gangster culture, and our government wants it to happen. I want to hear more of these stories when we come back, Buckley Hammond, in the next hour. But first off, in the 30 seconds we've got left, why do you think the system wants to do this here?
Well, I think they want to implode it from the inside. I mean, it's like injecting a cancer. It's like putting polonium inside of somebody's body. You know, it's if you take people that have lived in that circumstance and you put them inside of a normal society, we're soft.
Buckley, continuing, and you're going to tell us more of the stories in the next segment, and then finish up with your big picture. You want to get into the whole refugee situation and decipher that. But some of the other stories of what you saw in Guatemala.
Well, you know, there was, beyond what I experienced personally, and I can only tell those stories from my perspective, I know that there was a lot of fear in Guatemala regarding recriminations and different people who would attack other people, and then just straight up
people would tattle though to send the government at you. Those stories?
Absolutely.
They tried to claim your ham radio stuff was terrorist or something.
Yeah, my dad had been a ham radio since he was young. He was actually
youngest guy in Texas ever. I think in the country, actually.
Exactly. He was one of the youngest people to ever get a ham radio license. And obviously, he operated a ham radio down there where they would do what's called a phone patch, where someone from up here could call someone with a ham radio and relay it down to him. And so people could talk internationally on the phone. This was before the internet, before international phone lines even went down to third world countries like Guatemala or were reliable. But yeah, that's true. People would say that that he was working for the CIA, or they would say that he was working for the other side, and it was just a very convoluted thing. And he literally, the government literally came and confiscated all of his equipment and made him shut down his ham radio operation. You know, and he was really just an enthusiast. He would collect CQ cards, which is basically when ham radio people talk to each other, they send each other a card to prove that it happened. And he had it from all over the world: Africa, the Faroe Islands, Pitcairn Islands, which was a very that was a really cool one. So he talked to people all around the world doing that.
Didn't Pitcairn where the bounty went?
Exactly. That's the Mutiny on the Bounty place. So what that really underscores is that even when you have a society like that, and you have a government that is literally, you know, all-encompassing and militarized to the hilt, that when people don't like you or they have any sort of personal grudge, or there's a bad circumstance, that, you know, they can make up stories. They can say that you were doing this and doing that, and it's already starting to happen here in the United States. You know, there's lots of recriminations that can fly around, especially when there is you know, you have a government that is really militarized, and so that was an interesting example. I didn't even really thought about that.
And once governments get like this, it always makes it explode and get worse. It doesn't make it get better. And the war on drugs is fueling it as well.
Absolutely. One of the stories that two of the stories that I wanted to tell, and they're interesting from two perspectives, is that my brother, who just passed away earlier this year, was actually kidnapped twice in Guatemala when he was a young child. And the reason why I said it's from two perspectives is because the first time that he was kidnapped by criminals who wanted a ransom. They basically saw a white kid that they could snatch up, and they took him away and they demanded a ransom. Luckily we got him back, you know, and the second time that my brother was kidnapped was for political reasons, oddly enough. We were familiar with some people that were in the government there in Guatemala, and he was kidnapped, and basically they were demanding the release of some prisoners that they had for his release. And the story goes is that they made the exchange, but then they followed the people back to where their safe house was, and then they attacked the safe house, and when they busted into the safe house, they found plans to basically attack the neighborhood that we lived in, which was full of military people and lots of different, you know, middle to upper class people.
I want to hear about this. Tell the whole story when we get back, because it just gets wilder and wilder. The heaven that is Central and South America.
Everything we said came true. Everything we've done's been right.
But first off, going back to my cousin, Buckley Hammond, who works at Infowars.com, you'll see his name on camera and in production and in graphics and music on my first film, America Destroyed by Design, and the next 4 films as well. And he's just back at the Infowars base here. 22 years ago, he would help me because he had a recording studio and stuff and was already a successful DJ by the time he was out of high school. He would help me record commercials to then send a radio station and say, hey, I want to come there and cut commercials for you. And they'd laugh at me and stuff, but a few years later, they weren't laughing anymore. And I was there and do mock radio shows. And then I went and started doing Access Television. The rest is history. But here you are. So the first 11 years of your life, growing up in Guatemala, and so your dad's down there as a school administrator. And you guys bought some property, were growing coffee. And a lot of his buddies had moved down there after Vietnam. So there was a lot of government people there as well. And even, I know, flew some planes for some folks' his other job because he was a pilot. And so you're in this government district. Start back over with these stories of how wondrous Guatemala was then, and then now what it's devolved into even worse. Well,
the second story of my brother being kidnapped. Basically, he was kidnapped by the guerrilleros, which are the insurgent, left-wing military insurgents. And their plan is that they wanted to have some of their cronies released from prison that had been captured. So that was what their demands were. And when they did the exchange with Peter and the prisoners, the intelligence services or something followed the guerrilleros back to where their safe house was, and then they assaulted the safe house, and they came in They assaulted the safe house, and when they went in, they saw all these plans laid out on a table. I mean, it's so ridiculous. It sounds like a movie, but they busted in, and they found all these plans laid out on the table where there was an assault and an attack that was just imminently about to happen in the neighborhood that we lived in. And so basically, they were going to come back around and capture a lot more people. It was almost like they got too greedy. And so they basically... They marshaled a bunch of people and came into our neighborhood, and all the military was there, and they were hiding behind our walls. In Guatemala, you have like 4 to 6 foot walls around everybody's house, and the assault happened. And literally while we were inside of our house, and we were lying on the ground, so we were staying below the bullets. There was a big assault that happened in my backyard. The insurgents tried to come in, and the military rebuffed them. And I mean, there were a lot of casualties. I was young, and it was really chaotic, and I can't really remember it the way that you would remember a scene from a movie or something like that. But I do remember the whole experience and the circumstance. So the bottom line is that for a number of different reasons, whether it was criminal or whether it was political, the turmoil in Guatemala it was very vicious back in those days. But in one sense, it was sort of directed. It was directed, towards one side to the other, and the people were kind of in the middle. And now that has devolved into this absolute, brutal anarchy where people are just running around, murdering other people, and there's all kinds of criminal behavior in the context of drugs and power and.
You were talking about the article earlier, and we put it on screen. Mainstream news article about 900 dead bus drivers in 1 year.
Exactly, and that
Don't just take the wallet off the bus driver; just shoot him in the head.
Well, I think that a lot of what that is they charge extortion. So if you are a person that can't protect yourself, they don't have the ability to have guns in Guatemala because just like Mexico, they don't have the Second Amendment.
I told the story of the Mexican army pulling over the tour bus and taking all the guy's money.
Exactly.
And him getting on crying.
So if you can't protect yourself, this is the...
But if I don't want to live like that, I'm a racist.
Exactly. This is a perfect example of why the Second Amendment is important. Because if you can't protect yourself...
But these people come up, get in the Democratic Party, and are voting 90+% of the time to take my guns. On record.
Absolutely.
And the Mexican TV says take our guns. I mean, this is outrageous. And we'll turn them all in under political correctness. I'm telling you.
Right. Well,
I mean, this country is a joke now.
It's an ideology that's clearly being pushed by those that want to control you. Because if you have the capability to defend yourself, then you won't be robbed. I mean, that's just as clear as day. And if people, they always say, an armed society is a polite society. Well, what you have down there is the absolute inverse. It's a savage, brutal society with, zero respect for life and zero compassion for other people. What's interesting to me is that, when we're talking about all of this because of the whole open border circumstance, right?
And the main group now is Guatemalans.
Exactly.
Or, as Biden calls them, our children.
And, it's Guatemala and it's El Salvador and it's Honduras, and those are all the...
hell pits.
They're all the poorest, worst circumstances in Central America. And, probably in this hemisphere, literally. I mean, there's some bad stuff that happens down in South America, but it is utterly lawless. And what is happening, to me, that is so... It's incredulous. I would say incredible, but I was totally incredulous when I heard what was happening with them allowing all these people to come across. And to me, the issue is that the liberals are going to paint this as, oh, let's be compassionate to these people. Let's, they're just children that are running from a war-torn circumstance, and that they're, that they're refugees. Well, in a sense, yes, that's true, but this has been going on for 36 years. It's not like it just started. So to me, that compassion rings utterly hollow, because they're only saying that now in the context of the circumstance of these borders being open, and they're letting all these thugs with tattoos all over their faces that would kill your kid for no reason at all whatsoever. It's mind-blowing. I
mean, because in Guatemala and Mexico now, it's literal devil cults that are into total death and corruption and into dying young, and they just find a Border Patrol agent and his dad fishing and kill him in front of the mother for no reason. Not even because they were Border Patrol. They just wanted to rob them. And it's like, oh, you're so wonderful. We love you. And Robert Rodriguez says, La Reconquista, as he lives, he's got hundreds of millions of dollars.
Well, it's
I mean, it's just crazy town.
It's unconscionable, and it's utterly immoral. It's one of the most evil things that can happen on the face of the earth is to give power to people like that and let them ravage the society. And, you know, I have to say that, you know, Guatemala is my home country, and I love the people down there. They are beautiful. They're hardworking. They're amazing, wonderful people with huge open hearts. They're fantastic people, and it just breaks my heart that this is happening to them. But
they're fed on by a criminal class.
And the way to help them is not to let them come across the border and become welfare recipients and under that power, but to help them with self-determination, help them be able to get up by their bootstraps and change what's happening inside of those countries by our influence, which is what the USA through the CIA has been doing the absolute opposite of that for 36 years. So we are at fault to some degree with what is happening down there, but it's not going to be fixed by letting them all come up here and take advantage of the system that we have.
Well, especially when it's Acorn and the Chicago mob literally planning to use them as mules and just exploit them and run fake tax returns through them. I mean, the Democratic Party literally is an organized crime syndicate. I mean, they run the rackets, everything.
The thing that is one of the biggest ironies of this whole thing to me is that I just came from 10 years in Chicago, is that Rahm Emanuel said, send them up here. Send them to Chicago. You know what? First of all, Chicago can't even keep what's going on with themselves together. Chicago has one of the highest murder rates in the country.
In the world.
It's a beautiful, wonderful, amazing, gorgeous city, and I love it to death. But, you know, you gotta fix your own house before you start inviting all this into your house. You know, it just doesn't. That's just so ludicrous. It doesn't make any sense to me at all whatsoever from any perspective.
And we're on the radio in Chicago, and they're great people. And one neighborhood's safe and nice. The next neighborhood's a literal, I mean, but it's just creeping in everywhere. The Democrats really are just, and I'm not glorifying Republicans. They've got all their own corruption problems. But the Democrats themselves really are deviants, Buckley. I mean, and by deviants, they really like screwing stuff up. They're the type of people that you'd invite to a party who would get up and crap in the punch bowl. I mean, I'm really serious.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that's true. And if you look at what's happening in Chicago, if you look at a sort of a heat map of where all the murders have occurred in Chicago, they're basically west of the city and then southwest of the city. And those are the two major Hispanic and black populations. So when you go down there and you actually drive through all these neighborhoods and you talk to these people, you see that the vast majority of those people are on welfare. The vast majority of those people are trapped inside of that system, and they are not going to self-determinate out of that because they're in a very vicious cycle. And that's what the liberals want to promote. They want to bring all these people up from Guatemala that are already in a hellhole and put them into that system. And
well, it'll kind of be a cherry on top then.
Well, yeah, I guess so. But it just, if you back away from all the hysteria, you pull away from all the politics of everything else, it's irrational. And the only way that it could be rationalized is if they were looking for more people to control, but to have more people that were dependent upon the state. Because it doesn't make any sense in any other.
Well, they admit it's Cloward and Piven. It's Agenda 21. It's wrecked the country.
Exactly.
I mean, I was reading, we're in Chicago, all these new taxes Emanuel put in, something like when you sell your place, it's double the tax and just harassing everyone. And I mean, that's the model they want us to live under. Exactly.
It's horrific. I mean, it's the taxes in Chicago are I think they are literally the highest in the country. And let me tell you, like, they downtown is gorgeous. They put out beautiful flowers and they really manicure it and everything else. But that city is utterly and literally one of the most corrupt cities in the United States, and it's an incubator for what the liberal policies. And
they run a tax against the Second Amendment out of there. It's an evil fortress of scum in government attacking anything good in the country.
Exactly.
Buckley Hammond, thanks for coming in. We're going to take this video report, get it up. Thank you so much. We'll be back with what's really happening in Iraq and the bombing.
City of Austin tap water versus filtered City of Austin tap water. I can like taste dirt in it.
God knows what's in this.
This has an aftertaste.
Tastes like Austin water? Yeah, it does.
These people just sampled City of Austin tap water straight from the faucet. Next, we had them try a sample of tap water filtered through the Pro Pure G2.0 filtration system.
High quality H2O.
That one is better.
Tastes like nothing.
Yep, I know what good water tastes like. It's good water.
Most tap water contains added substances like fluoride, chlorine, Monsanto's deadly pesticide, glyphosate, and many others. Studies prove that these substances are linked to an assortment of major health issues, including tooth decay, lowered IQ, and even cancer.
It tastes like you're drinking out of the lake when you're drinking tap water.
Yeah, it has that processed flavor to it.
The Pro Pure G2.0 filtration system removes these deadly substances and many more, leaving only fresh-tasting, deliciously clean water.
Okay, this is very tasty.
It's good water.
Refreshing.
It's good.
Go to InfoWarsStore.com today. Use promo code WATER and save 10% off your Pro Pure purchase. Again, that's InfoWarsStore.com or call 1-888-253-3139.